On the morning of September 22nd, 1914, the British armoured cruisers Aboukir, Hogue and Cressy were on patrol not far from the coast of Holland. The First World War was only a few weeks old, and not a single hostile ship had been spotted so far. But not far away, observing the British ships through a periscope, were the crew of the German submarine U-9, who were about to shatter the quiet of that September morning in a devastating single-handed attack mounted in broad daylight against the Royal Navy. This video is sponsored by CuriosityStream, the online subscription streaming site for people who want to know more. CuriosityStream hosts thousands of documentaries on a wide range of topics including history, nature, technology, and much more. For example, if you want to know more about the Second World War, then you could check out Apocalypse World War II, which tells the key events of the war complete with colour footage. Or for something related to the submarine war, there's the Search for Japan's Lost Super Sub, tracking the effort to locate the wreck of the massive Japanese submarine I-400. With CuriosityStream, you can watch any of these documentaries anywhere at any time on any device. That includes 35 collections of curated programs hand-picked by CuriosityStream's experts. If you go to curiositystream.com/historiograph and use the code Historigraph, you can get an entire year's membership for just $14.99. Thanks again to CuriosityStream for sponsoring this video. At the outbreak of the First World War, the Royal Navy had a large number of older ships in mothballs, placed in reserve during and after the reorganisation of the Navy under Admiral Jackie Fisher. Among these ships were 5 Cressy-class armoured cruisers, which had been built in the late 1890s and had spent years tied up on the River Medway in Kent. Cressy, Aboukir, Hogue, Bacchante and Euryalus were reactivated at the start of hostilities and crewed with reservists drawn from the local area, in particular the dockyard town of Chatham. They were assigned to patrol an area of the North Sea off the Dutch coast known as the Broad 14s under Rear Admiral Arthur Christian, in support of the destroyers at Harwich under Commodore Reginald Tyrwhitt. A key objective of the Navy in the early weeks of the war was to keep the German Navy away from transports taking British troops to France, and so Christian ships began a relentless patrol, only returning to port to coal or to carry out repairs. This was no easy task for the ageing ships, which in rough autumn weather struggled to maintain any kind of speed without using copious amounts of coal, and they do so alone, since the destroyers they were supposed to support couldn't maintain the patrol in the rough seas. To make matters worse, Rear Admiral Christian had to contend with frequent engine breakdowns, meaning there were sometimes only 3 of the 5 cruisers at sea. In this position, the cruisers were highly vulnerable, old, slow ships prone to malfunction with basically untrained crews. If they ran into virtually any modern German surface ships, they would be in serious danger. Commodores Tyrwhitt and Roger Keyes, in command of the local submarine flotilla, appreciated this and was soon asking the Admiralty to withdraw the Cressys out of harm's way. Trying to force the Navy's bureaucracy into action was easier said than done though, as there were several key figures who could intervene. Keyes in particular was vociferous, going straight to the top and managing to secure a meeting with the First Lord of the Admiralty, Winston Churchill, on September 17th. Commodore Keyes was able to convince him that the Cressys were hugely unsuited for their current task and had even become known in the Navy as the Live Bait Squadron. Churchill recommended that the cruisers be withdrawn, a request that met with approval from Admiral John Jellicoe, the Commander-in-Chief of the Grand Fleet. However, that wasn't the end of the story. Vice Admiral Doveton Sturdy, the Chief of the War Staff at the Admiralty, intervened to convince Admiral Prince Louis Battenberg, the First Sea Lord, to keep the ships where they were. Sturdy's argument was that the Cressys should be replaced as soon as possible by new Arethusa-class light cruisers, but since these weren't ready yet, then the armoured ships were better than nothing. And so, as another North Sea storm closed in on September 21st, 3 of Rear Admiral Christian's ships remained at sea, ploughing through the waves. Their accompanying destroyers had returned to port because of the weather, and Christian himself was ashore with the Euryalus. Under the temporary command of HMS Aboukir's captain John Drummond, the cruisers were alone. At the same time, not far away, a German U-boat submarine lay 50 feet under the sea, being buffeted by the rough weather. This was U-9, under the command of Lieutenant Otto Verdigan, a fearlessly brave 32-year-old who had nearly been killed twice before while serving in submarines. At the start of the war, Germany had 24 U-boats in commission. These were tiny 500-ton boats with crews of just 28 men and 2 torpedo tubes at each end. Their engines burnt kerosene, so produced a plume of dark smoke whenever they steamed on the surface, making them easy to detect. U-9 had been scheduled to leave Germany as soon as war was declared, but engine troubles and bad weather delayed it in port for 6 weeks, before Verdigan could finally take his boat out on September 20th. He was tasked with attacking British transports off Ostend, but unfortunately the same North Sea storms that were battering the British ships also hit U-9 and pushed it off course towards the Dutch coast. By the morning of September 22nd, Verdigan was about ready to give up and take his boat back to port, when the weather broke and the sea calmed. Rising to periscope depth with the boat's secondary electric engines, Verdigan took one look around as the sun rose. To his surprise, he could spot 3 British cruisers steaming directly towards him, 4,000 yards apart. The British that morning were relieved to see the end of the bad weather. By 5 AM, the sea was calm enough for the destroyers to operate, so Commodore Tyrwhitt left Harwich with a light cruiser and 14 destroyers. The journey to the patrol location would take 4 hours. As the sun came up that morning, Captain Drummond had his 3 ships steaming line abreast at 10 knots. None of them were zigzagging or varying their course. The only precautions were lookouts being posted and 2 guns on each ship being loaded and manned. Everything seemed calm, as it had been for weeks. What the lookouts did not see was a periscope steadily approaching HMS Aboukir on its port side. From just under 1,000 yards away, Verdigan fired 1 bow torpedo before descending once more to 50 feet. With Aboukir keeping a steady, consistent course and speed, it was an easy shot to aim. At 6:20 AM, the torpedo slammed into Aboukir amidships, blowing a massive hole in the side and flooding the engine and boiler rooms. The ship quickly came to a halt and began to list dramatically. Having seen no sign of submarine previously, Drummond initially believed that his ship had struck a mine, but after damage reports were received, he signalled to the others that Aboukir had been torpedoed. The flooding on the armoured cruiser was soon running out of control, and just 25 minutes after she was hit, Aboukir capsized, leaving hundreds of sailors in the water. In response, Captain Wilmot Nicholson of HMS Hogue took his ship towards the stricken Aboukir, ordering his crew to keep an eye out for periscopes. Boats were sent out to recover survivors, and Hogue came to a complete stop not far from the Aboukir, which was still hanging upside down near the surface. Whether Captain Nicholson believed that the submarine would not attempt another attack or that his crew would be able to spot it before it could get a torpedo away is a bit of a mystery, but either way he was mistaken. After hitting Aboukir, Lieutenant Verdigan brought his boat cautiously back to the surface at about 6:50, after reloading the empty front tube. He raised his periscope and discovered, to his astonishment, HMS Hogue straight in front of the boat, 300 yards away, not moving. Wasting no time, U-9 fired both its 4 torpedoes at 6:55. Verdigan took his boat back to a safe depth as the metal fish closed in on their target. After 30 seconds, 2 loud explosions could be heard. On board Hogue, Captain Nicholson had ordered all watertight doors on the ship to be shut, but in a moment that exposed the inexperience of the crew, doors inside the engine room were left half open. Water rushed in, dooming the Hogue to capsize at 7:15, even before the boats full of survivors from Aboukir had arrived back. The scene in the water was now one of utter carnage, as the last remaining cruiser, HMS Cressy, also came in close to try and rescue as many sailors as possible. I think it's important to note here that all 3 of these ships had been crewed from reservists from the same local area around the Medway River. Many of them would probably have known each other, and the instinct to save their comrades from drowning, I think, got the better of both the Hogue and Cressy, to their detriment. Not content with sinking just the 2 armoured cruisers, U-9 circled around while submerged again to continue the attack, even as the power in its batteries dropped to dangerously low levels. By 7:10, Verdigan had lined up the rear tubes on Cressy, which was also stationary to pick up survivors. 2 torpedoes were fired. This time, lookouts on the target spotted the periscope and torpedo track and alerted the bridge. Cressy went to full ahead and managed to dodge one of the torpedoes, but the second slammed into its side. Noticing this, as he had stayed on the surface this time, Verdigan decided to make sure the ship sank, swinging his boat around to fire the last loaded bow torpedo at 7:30. This one ruptured Cressy's boiler room, dooming the ship. HMS Cressy sank at 7:55, completing an extraordinary victory for the German submarine. In a little over an hour between first and last torpedoes, 1 German submarine had sunk 3 much larger British cruisers and escaped unharmed. With Tyrwhitt's ship still some distance away, hundreds of British sailors had to cling on in the cold North Sea until help arrived in the form of Dutch trawlers. Many did not make it. 1,459 men were killed, with 837 being pulled from the sea. In material terms, the loss of 3 obsolete and pretty useless cruisers was insignificant in the grand scheme of things and did not affect the balance of power. But the loss of life stung both the Navy and the local communities from which the sailors had been drawn. For Germany, Lieutenant Verdigan became the nation's first naval war hero, awarded the Iron Cross First Class for his daring attack. It was an early sign of just how dangerous U-boats would be as the war progressed. When military success delivered the Belgian port of Zeebrugge into German hands, U-boats would be able to operate from there virtually inside the English Channel, a threat which culminated in an incredible British sabotage operation in 1918, which I'll be covering in the next video. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.